There is an invisible enemy living inside your mind right now. It whispers constantly. It makes you check your phone for likes before you even get out of bed. It makes you pause before posting, wondering what others will think. It makes you second-guess every text message, wondering if you sounded too eager or too cold. It makes you shrink your opinions in meetings, water down your truth in conversations, and abandon your own ideas the moment someone challenges them. This enemy has a name, and Alan Watts exposed it better than anyone. It is the desperate, aching need for external validation. And today, I am going to show you exactly why seeking validation is the most brutal trap keeping you from becoming who you truly are, and how to break free from it forever. You live in the most connected era in human history, yet you have never been more alone in your own skull. Every notification, every like, every comment, every share, they all trigger the same neurological circuit that ancient humans used when they needed tribal acceptance to survive. Back then, being cast out from the group meant death by starvation or predation. Your brain has not evolved past this. It still treats social rejection as a physical threat. Evolution designed you to be hyper-aware of social hierarchies, to monitor the expressions of others, to constantly adjust your behavior to maintain your place in the tribe. And the modern world has weaponized this flaw perfectly. Social media is not a connection tool. It is a validation extraction machine, and you are the raw material being processed. Every platform is engineered to keep you chasing the next hit of dopamine from approval, and they are incredibly effective at it. The average person checks their phone over 90 times a day, most of those checks driven by the hope that someone, somewhere, has acknowledged their existence. Alan Watts was a British philosopher who brought Eastern wisdom to Western audiences in the mid-20th century. He spoke about the illusion of the self, the nature of consciousness, and the traps of ego. But beneath all his teachings was one central theme: you are already complete. You do not need to become anything. You do not need to earn your right to exist. And you certainly do not need anyone else's permission to be who you are. Watts understood that the Western mind is obsessively concerned with achievement, status, and approval, and he saw how this constant striving robs people of the peace they already possess. He spent decades trying to wake people up from this collective delusion, this endless hamster wheel of trying to be more, have more, and be seen as more. His brutal truth about validation is simply this: every moment you spend seeking approval is a moment you spend disconnected from your own reality. You are so busy performing for an audience that you forget you are also the actor, the director, and the only one who truly knows the whole script. Here is the cruel irony no one talks about. The more you seek validation, the less you receive, and the less you receive, the more desperate you become. It is an endless hunger that can never be satisfied because the goal keeps moving. You get one like, but you wanted 10. You get 10, but you wanted a comment. You get a comment, but it was not the comment you wanted. You wanted more likes, more engagement, more proof that you matter. The hedonic treadmill of social approval runs in reverse. No matter how much you achieve, the goal feels further away because your baseline for happiness keeps escalating. And the worst part? The people whose opinions you crave so desperately are too busy worrying about their own validation to notice yours. They are not sitting there judging you. They are not analyzing your posts or your performance. They are too caught up in their own desperate need for approval to spare a thought for you. If you have ever felt this insane cycle, type "I see it" in the comments right now. Alan Watts described the ego as a kind of invisible cage. When you are constantly seeking validation, you are living your life from outside the cage, performing for the imaginary audience in your head rather than experiencing life from within. He called this being self-conscious in the most pathological sense. Instead of being conscious of yourself, aware, present, alive, you become consumed by the image others might have of you. You create a mental movie of how you appear to others, and you spend all your energy editing that movie rather than living the actual moment. You become a character in your own story rather than the author of it. Every decision becomes a performance. Every conversation becomes a negotiation for approval. And somewhere along the way, you lose touch with what you actually think, feel, and want. You become a hollow shell, a puppet operated by the imagined expectations of others. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you said what you truly thought, knowing it would not be popular? When was the last time you dressed for yourself rather than for how others might perceive you? When was the last time you made a decision based purely on what felt right to you, regardless of how it would look to everyone else? When was the last time you chose a restaurant based solely on what you wanted to eat, rather than what would impress your date? When was the last time you admitted you did not know something without feeling a flash of shame? If you cannot remember, that is the cost of validation seeking. You are not living your life. You are editing it in real time, deleting the parts that might get rejected, and performing an endless audition for an audience that is not even watching. The mental energy spent on this performance is astronomical. It is exhausting, and it produces nothing of lasting value. You spend your finite time and energy managing impressions instead of creating anything meaningful. From the moment you were born, you were enrolled in a system designed to make you dependent on external approval, reward, and punishment. Gold stars and gold crosses, praise and shame. Your parents rewarded you for being good, for being quiet, for being agreeable. Your teachers rewarded you for being smart, for having the right answers, for fitting the mold. Your bosses will reward you for being compliant, for meeting metrics, for playing the corporate game. Society runs on the fuel of approval seeking because people who need validation are predictable, controllable, and easy to manage. A population desperate for approval will work harder, consume more, and never question the system that keeps them chasing a carrot on a stick. You were taught that your worth comes from achievement, status, and recognition. But Alan Watts would tell you this is the grand illusion. You were never meant to earn your worth. You were born with it. Everything else is just noise. The moment you realize that your worth is intrinsic, unconditional, and independent of any external factor, is the moment you begin to truly live. Now, let me be clear about something. Seeking feedback is not the same as seeking validation. Feedback is information about reality. It tells you whether your actions are effective, whether your communication is landing, whether your work is serving its purpose. Feedback is useful. It is how you learn, how you improve, how you navigate the practical realities of life. If you are building a product, you need to know if people will buy it. If you are giving a presentation, you need to know if the audience understands. This is feedback, and it is essential. Validation is different. Validation is the emotional need for reassurance that you are okay, that you are accepted, that you matter. It is the desperate hope that someone will tell you that you are good enough, that you are worthy, that you belong. Feedback asks, is this working? Validation asks, do people like me? One is a question about the external world and your effectiveness in navigating it. The other is a question about your worth, and it should never be dependent on anyone else's opinion. The wisest people in history sought feedback relentlessly. They studied their failures, learned from their mistakes, and adjusted their strategies. They never sought validation. They knew that validation was a trap, a distraction from the real work of actually becoming better. Alan Watts once said that the ego is essentially a social institution, and it has no reality outside of society. What this means is profound. Your fear of disapproval exists only because you believe in the social game. You have internalized the rules of a game that was invented by humans, a game that has no cosmic significance, no ultimate truth. Status is a fiction. Prestige is a collective hallucination. Worth is not assigned by society, it is discovered within. But when you step back and see the game for what it is, a collective hallucination about status, prestige, and worth, the power it holds over you dissolves. You can still participate in society. You can still be polite, effective, and collaborative. You can still play the game while knowing it is just a game. But you no longer need the applause. You no longer need the recognition. You no longer need anyone to tell you that you are enough, because you already know it in your bones. This is the freedom that comes when you stop needing the world to validate your existence. It is a liberation that most people never experience, because they are too busy chasing shadows on the cave wall. Psychologists talk about internal versus external loci of evaluation. When your locus of evaluation is external, you measure your worth by how others respond to you. You look outward for the verdict on your life. You gauge your success by comparing yourself to others. You need constant reassurance that you are doing well, that you are valued, that you matter. When it is internal, you measure your worth by your own standards, values, and conscience. You know whether you have acted with integrity, whether you have lived according to your principles, whether you have been true to yourself. Alan Watts lived from an internal locus entirely. He was controversial, polarizing, and frequently misunderstood. The academic establishment dismissed him. Traditional religious leaders criticized him. He did not care. He spoke his truth regardless of whether the establishment approved. He knew that his worth was not determined by his critics or his fans, but by his own commitment to truth and authenticity. And this is the secret no one tells you. The moment you fully accept that you will never get universal approval, you become free. You stop trying to please everyone. You stop shrinking from legitimate conflict. You stop betraying your own values to maintain the fragile peace of avoiding disapproval. You become able to say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, and be who you truly are. Watts was obsessed with the present moment. He taught that the ego lives in the past and future, replaying old wounds, imagining future scenarios, constructing narratives about who you are and who you need to become. The ego is essentially a time travel machine that keeps you trapped in mental constructions rather than experiencing reality as it is. Validation seeking is entirely a future-oriented activity. You do something now, anticipating the reward of approval later. You perform an act of kindness, and then you wait for someone to notice and acknowledge your goodness. You share an idea, and then you refresh the page, hoping for validation. Or you refrain from doing something now, anticipating the punishment of disapproval later. You stay quiet in a meeting because speaking up might draw criticism. You hold back your true opinion because it might not be popular. Either way, you are not present. You are either living in the past or the future. You are missing the only moment that actually exists, the only moment in which you can actually live. The moment you anchor yourself in the present, truly present, not performing for an imagined future, validation loses its grip. Because in the present moment, there is no one judging you. There is only what is happening and your response to it. There is only this breath, this action, this choice. And when you act from that place, validation becomes irrelevant. Who are you, really? If you strip away every title, every achievement, every reputation, every opinion that others have given you, what remains? If you remove the labels you have collected over the years, good student, good employee, good friend, good parent, what is left? Alan Watts would say that what remains is the true self, the consciousness that witnesses everything without needing anything. It is the observer behind the observed, the awareness behind the experience. It is what you were before the world told you who you should be. But here is the brutal part. Most people have never met their true self. They have only ever met their social persona, the constructed identity they built from accumulated validations. Every you are so smart, every you are so talented, every you are a good person. These were bricks in the prison wall. Every promotion, every award, every compliment, these became the foundation on which you built your false self. You built an identity from borrowed approval, and now you are trapped inside it, terrified to do anything that might crack the facade. Breaking free means destroying that prison brick by brick. It means questioning every assumption you have about who you are. It means doing things that might not be approved. It means discovering, for the first time, who you actually are when no one is watching. The final truth is this: you must become comfortable living without a net. No one is coming to validate you. No one is going to tell you that you made the right choice. No audience will applaud your courage or confirm your worth. The standing ovation you imagine in your head, the recognition you dream about, the moment when someone finally sees you and validates your existence, it is not coming. And honestly, that is the best news you could ever receive. Because once you stop waiting for external validation, you become completely free. You must generate that validation from within. You must become your own source of worth, your own anchor, your own reason for existing. This is what Alan Watts meant when he talked about self-realization, not as a mystical experience, but as a practical state of living without the desperate need for external reassurance. It is terrifying at first. The ego screams. It throws every worst-case scenario at you. It tells you that you will be alone, rejected, abandoned. But then, something shifts. You realize that the disapproval you feared so much is rarely as catastrophic as you imagined. The world keeps turning. Life goes on. And you are still here, stronger, more authentic, more free. And the freedom on the other side is absolute. So here is your challenge. Tomorrow, do one thing that no one will validate. Make one decision based purely on your own internal compass, with no expectation of recognition or approval. It can be small, wearing what you want, saying what you actually think, pursuing an interest no one else understands. Maybe it is ordering the meal you actually want instead of the safe option. Maybe it is admitting you do not know something instead of pretending to be an expert. Maybe it is spending an afternoon doing something completely unproductive that brings you joy. Notice how it feels. Notice the fear. Notice the urge to perform or explain. Notice the voice in your head that wants to document it and share it for validation. And then notice what happens when no one reacts the way you expected. The world does not collapse. You do not disappear. No one judges you as harshly as you judged yourself. You are still here, whole, complete, and free. Alan Watts spent his entire life teaching one lesson: you are already enough. You always have been. You were born enough, you will die enough, and nothing you do or fail to do changes that fundamental truth. Stop looking for permission to be who you already are. Stop waiting for the world to tell you that you matter. The brutal truth is that the validation you seek was never going to make you whole anyway. Only you can do that. And you can do it right now, without a single like, comment, or nod of approval. That is the only truth that matters. Think about the most validation-seeking behavior you have right now. Maybe it is checking your phone first thing in the morning, not for any practical purpose, but hoping someone acknowledged you while you were sleeping. Maybe it is sharing everything you do online, turning your life into a performance for an audience of strangers. Maybe it is constantly asking for reassurance in your relationships, needing your partner to tell you they love you multiple times a day just to function. Maybe it is people's pleasing at work, agreeing with everything your boss says, never pushing back, never offering a dissenting opinion, even when you know there is a better way. These are the invisible chains that bind you, and you wear them willingly because they feel safe. But they are not safe. They are a slow poison. They kill your authentic self, one approval at a time. Consider the people you admire most in history, the ones who actually changed the world. They were not seeking validation. They could not have been, because the consensus view is almost always wrong. If you seek validation, you will inevitably end up doing what everyone else is doing, thinking what everyone else is thinking, being who everyone else wants you to be. But the people who innovate, who create, who lead, who disrupt, they operate outside the approval of the crowd. They know that if everyone agrees with them, they are probably not saying anything worth saying. They have made peace with rejection, with misunderstanding, with being alone in their vision. This is the price of authenticity. It is lonely at first, but the freedom on the other side is worth more than any amount of approval. One of the most powerful practices you can develop is the willingness to be disliked. Not to be cruel, not to be careless, but to be willing to have your boundaries crossed, your opinions challenged, your presence unwelcome. When you are no longer afraid of being disliked, you become incredibly powerful. You can say no without guilt. You can speak your truth without apology. You can walk away from situations that do not serve you. You can be completely yourself without performing for anyone. This is what Alan Watts called waking up from the dream of social approval. It is not that you become callous or indifferent to others. You simply stop needing their permission to exist. You become kind because you want to be kind, not because you want to be liked. You become honest because honesty matters to you, not because you want others to think you are a good person. Your motivation shifts from external to internal, and that shift changes everything. If this video resonated with you, drop a comment below with your own commitment to stop seeking validation. What is one thing you are going to do for yourself, starting today? Something that no one will validate, something that is purely for you. Share it with the community, not for approval, but as a declaration of your own independence. As a commitment to yourself that you are done living for other people's opinions. This is your moment of liberation. This is the first day of living for yourself. It gets easier, but it starts now. Every small act of authentic living builds your muscle for freedom. Every time you choose your own path over the path of approval, you become stronger. And eventually, you look back and realize you hardly recognize the person who used to live for validation. That person seems like a stranger, a prisoner who did not know they had the key to their own cell all along. You are that person now. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone trapped in the validation trap, someone who needs to break free from the cage of approval seeking, share this video with them. Help them see what Alan Watts saw. Help them break free from the cage. Subscribe if you want more wisdom from the great philosophers applied to modern life. More brutal truths that set you free. Until next time.